Hi guys, another one of Grandad's junk pile projects. I have a plan, I have an idea. I want to try and replicate one of Lidmotor's projects, or at least based on one of his projects. It's one he calls a wobbling needle pulse motor, and I know somewhere in here I've got some old power cable. Because I want to, there it is, yeah, I want to make a pulse motor using a thick coil of copper wire instead of the usual bobbin full of thin wire. Just trying to see, I think I've got one laying around here somewhere. Oh, I did have one. Somebody else was asking if they could have a look around my workroom. Well, that's what we're doing at the moment. I'm sure I had one here somewhere. That's not what I was looking for, but that sort of thing. Normally you make a coil that looks something like that and use that as the electromagnet that pushes the permanent magnet round and round in the pulse motor. But I want to make one, as I say, from a thick piece of copper wire and see if I can get the same effect. I might have to speed this up in the video because this is taking too long to find the bits. Oh well, that was the main thing, so we'll use that anyway. Oh, I know. Yeah, that plastic top will probably do. Lidmotor uses lids off of pill bottles and that sort of thing. I tend to use these tops that come off of cotton bud tubs. Let's see if I've got another one that's got bends in it. I might be able to use the lid off of this passion fruit body scrub. Well, that's not what's inside it, but the lid looks handy because it's got a tiny little dimple right in the middle, so that should help me to get the needle in the right place. Also, I'll strip the wire out of here to make my coil. This is 3-core wire. In the middle there's an uninsulated earth wire. If I'm careful I can get the blade along the edge of it. That's the uninsulated one. And then that's the insulated brown wire, that side, and blue wire the other side. I'm not quite sure what size that is. That looks about 1mm possibly. Anyway, I should be able to strip that now. Yeah. This is what I want to make my coil from. I did a little rocking flower using wire like this. A little bit like the rocking snowman, similar principle. So I'll coil this up, but I'm going to bend it something like this. This is where Lidmotor's idea comes in. I'm going to flatten this end, drill a very small hole in it for the needle to go through, so that will be the top bearing, and then the bottom bearing, it won't be that screw, but it'll be something like that because it's got a nice centre in it to hold the bottom of the needle. So that will stand something like that, and then we'll stick 4 magnets around the outside. You'll see when I've done it. That's the flat coil of wire that I'm going to use as my electromagnet. I've actually put it on some sticky tape there at the moment, and I'm going to mix up some 2-pack epoxy and just run it over the top of it to hold it all in one place. Right, I've just put a layer of epoxy over that, so we'll leave that to set, and then we'll move on. Because I haven't got very much of this wire, I'm going to have to solder on a piece of ordinary wire to the middle of that coil and use that to go to the battery circuit. The other end of this will be the top bearing, which I will hammer flat like Lidmotor did and drill a small hole in it. Pushed a needle through that centre point. What I need to do is mark up 4 equal spaces around there so we can attach the magnets. I put the point of the needle into the cross wires of the markings on my cutting board, so I should have these positions just right. So I should be able to put my magnets in those positions. Now I can either put them inside or outside. From a safety point of view, you'd put them on the inside. There's a little conversation on one of Lidmotor's recent videos about that. If you put them inside, then if your pulse motor is going really fast, there's not much chance of the motors coming loose and flying off. I don't expect this one to go really fast. I went for the inside option because I can just use double-sided sticky tape to hold them in place there. As a temporary measure, I've got my coil of wire just standing on its end and held in place with a map pin. I've got a couple of wires connected to it that go to this little AA battery pack, 2 AA batteries with a push button on top. I've got a screw head there that my needle stands in, and at the moment I'm just holding it with my fingers, and if I press this at the right time, obviously I'm just trying to time this by hand at the moment. Probably be easier if I put those black marks at the top so you could see where the magnet is when I press the button. But you get the general idea. I'm just trying to repel the magnets. If I get the timing wrong, it goes back the other way. So, that's the general idea. That's how a pulse motor works. Magnet, electromagnet. Electromagnet is set up to repel that magnet, and if you time it right, just as it's gone past, you repel it, and that accelerates it. You can use all sorts of clever bits of electronic to do this, or if your timing is right, you can do it by hand. So now I'm going to try and make this the other bearing, and the idea is as the magnet goes past, we need to make the circuit, complete the circuit, to charge the electromagnet, to push it away, and as it pushes it away it will then lose contact, so the magnet stops repelling, the next magnet flies into place, and the vibrations, if we're lucky, or the oscillations, should continue to spin it. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but I've just hammered the end of that flat, and now I'm going to drill a small hole in it for the needle to go through, and that will be the top bearing. This is how I would like it to work. Unfortunately, the wire that I've got is a little bit thinner than I wanted, and it's not as rigid as it needs to be. So at the moment I can manually make it go round. But it's rocking around too much to actually work on Lidmotor's wobbly needle principle. Oh, there you go. If I hold it still, it just about works. So if I stiffen it up a bit, we might get it working. But I'll need to put something here to hold it still. There we go, it's going again. Yeah, I'll have to put a piece of wood up here or something to stiffen it up. Swift bit of hot glue later. I've just hot glued this piece of wood straight up here. I've hot glued the coil to it, just hold it still, and I've hot glued that piece of wire to it. So at the moment quite right. Let's see if we can get it going. Now I'm holding it in and it was going. Not quite right. Let's see if we can adjust it. Looks like I've got it tilting a bit at the moment anyway. It's working. It's not working as well as Lidmotor's does, but you've got to admit, for a pile of junk, that's actually working. But it does need adjusting a bit. It looks like I actually dropped the camera on it just now, believe it or not. The tripod fell over, so it's bent it a little bit. There we go. That is awful. There you go, Lidmotor. Nothing like as good as yours. I do believe you probably spent a little bit more time setting it up. It's getting this adjustment just right. That looks terribly tilted at the moment. So dropping the camera on it definitely didn't help. Don't think it helped the camera much either. Oh, I love this. I could spend all night getting this right, I think. And it clearly works faster if I do it just pulsing it by hand. Oh, going a bit faster. I'm going to run out of video time in a minute. That'll have to do. So there we go. A very poor pulse motor which is made from some very thick, well I say very thick, about 1mm copper wire, wound into a coil there. The pulse, or the timing, is done by this being a loose fit on top of the needle. The current flows down the needle, out the bottom, onto that screw there, through this wire, to the battery, back into the coil. So that's the circuit. And the timing is done by the fact the needle is wobbling around in the top bearing. But you've got to get it just right for it to go. Hope you can see I'm just holding that button in, I'm not pulsing it now. If you get it exactly right, it spins fine, but you'll have a look at Lidmotor's videos for that. I'll put the links in the video description.